Well, the Italians weren't in the World Cup, so we had to give them something, right? Welcome back to Motorsport 101. I feel bad for every time Kimi Antonelli was asked about the World Cup during the last two race weekends, as if his country was actually in it or something. Anyway, welcome to episode 673 of Motorsport 101. I'm your friendly neighborhood host, Trey Harrison. Glad you could join us. And it's time for another double-header set of recordings here at M101 HQ. And this time we'll be talking about Formula One's Belgian Grand Prix because... spoiler alert, folks, and this may be a shock to you, Kimi Antonelli has beaten that ass again. And there was nothing anybody could do about it. Charles Leclerc tried his best, but spankings were given. Once again,
smooth off, you say.
Smooth off, you say. And only this time it was being delivered by the 19-year-old rather than the other way around. So... we'll be talking about that. We'll be talking about how Verstappen and Leclerc played into things, George Russell, people complaining about the regulations again. It's all that type of weekend. As Ghost Raptor says in our chat right now, the beatings will continue until morale improves. Morale has not improved. It definitely hasn't improved. That I can guarantee you. All of that across the next 45 minutes or so. Joining me, as ever, Mr. RJ O'Connell. Hello, sir.
I'm trying to think of the last time that, it's been about a month since Kimi Antonelli hasn't won a Formula One Grand Prix since we could all verify that lettuce will not infect you with a parasite that makes you commit, what's the word? You remember those really big Formula One engine failures for like the V10 era?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's the parasite makes your body do that.
Yeah, I think the technical term is it's like on Plague Inc., where if you got like the correct symptoms together at the right time, you would get explosive vomiting, and this time it's coming out the back end. It's like that. One of my favorite games during the actual pandemic when they made the game free. Can't imagine why. Free marketing. Yeah, as you do. Anyway, Cameron Buckley is also here. Hello, Cam.
Yes, and what's just been described to your ears is what we won't have to do, what I won't have to do, because we don't have to look at the A-Spec Aston Martin anymore after this weekend, at least in theory. There is a ray of hope where they can be not 4 seconds off the pace, but maybe more like the equal slowest team. Baby steps that matter.
I still can't believe we're talking about a upgrade package that is worth 2 seconds in the context of Formula One. Like, yeah.
And that would only get them on par with the team that wasn't here last year.
Starting completely from scratch. Yes.
It's going well.
It's going well. It's going well. So, like, it's...
so glad we got our Aston Martin chat done already. Mm-hmm. Move on.
It's awesome. It's the same step that my Devil Magic Red Sox have taken, where they went from being shit from an ass to winning like 15 games in a row.
Literally, as of publication, they've just wrapped up their 15 straight win. That win streak may end soon by the time this comes out. Who knows? But your general manager, Craig Breslow, for the moment, is not getting Nickelodeon slimed.
Smooth into the slime, you say.
Clean off, apparently.
Jaylen Brown was clearly the issue with this Red Sox team.
And see, now I just think you're getting your sports mixed up. Like, we've been playing too much 82-0 on the internet.
Yes, I got a team of 5 2013 LeBron Jameses and went like 62 wins. So, it doesn't make sense anymore.
Small Ball 5 didn't quite work out, apparently. Who knew? While we get all our references out of our system, let's quickly tell the good people where you can find us real quick. We're on youtube.com/motorsport101. We're on facebook.com/motorsport101. We're on Twitter at motorsport_101. If you want to find our personal handles on Blue Sky, you can. Dre Harrison, RJ O'Connell, and cbuckley917.bsky.social. If you want to see some video highlights of the show and some extra content from yours truly, you can at our Instagram page, Motorsport101pod, Or you can follow me personally at Dre Harrison 101 if you're that way inclined. Or you can follow us on TikTok at Motorsport M101 _ podcast is our username on there as well. Of course, our website where all of our content goes out is on there as well, motorsport101.com. And of course, if you really, really like us, you can back us financially on Patreon, patreon.com/motorsport101. If you back us at the $5 level, you get all of our content early, including episodes of the podcast. Or, if you even better, you can upgrade to the $10 tier and you can listen to these episodes live as they're being recorded, as Kira, Ghost Raptor, Ed, and Jason are all doing right now. Thank you for the ongoing support. And a huge shout out to Fergus, who backed us for a whole arse year. That is, again, I'm giving him 2 shout outs because he's that awesome. Remember, if you can back us and commit, if you want to commit for a whole year of support at any tier, you can do so at a 30% discount. It's basically 12 months for the price of 9. So that's neat. If you want to, if you're the sort of person that likes to pay up front and just get that financial hit out of the way, you can do so. I'm not telling you what to do with your money. Right, without further ado, let's get into F1's Belgian Grand Prix.
We've made it back to Spa-Francorchamps, home of the still too early on the calendar Belgian Grand Prix, where all of the drama happened early. Kimi Antonelli took another pole position ahead of a slipstream borrowing Max Verstappen in second. If you're wondering where Isack Hadjar was, well, he started at the back for taking all new bits of turbo combustion engine exhaust. Lando Norris posted time was good enough for third. 30 places. Golly, we're getting back into the 2015 McLaren Honda days.
If you're wondering, way ahead of that 105 place grid penalty, yeah.
Lando Norris would have qualified third, but he took a 10th place drop for a new battery. In the Grand Prix itself, Verstappen briefly led at Eau Rouge after dumping his battery at the start, but Antonelli repassed him onto the Kemmel Straight. Behind him, George Russell had a malfunctioning battery, took an outside pass on Lewis Hamilton, where Hamilton and Russell collided, putting Russell in the outside gravel and out of the race. Hamilton was later hit with a 5-second time penalty. Antonelli would inch away for Verstappen in the first half of the race, but Leclerc took the lead after being able to pit under a virtual safety car. The gain worth about 8 seconds on a normal stop, but Leclerc could only hang on for so long before Antonelli retook the lead and would inch the gap out to 2 seconds to win his 6th Grand Prix of 2026. And with George Russell in the gravel, Antonelli's luck has balanced out. He now has a 45-point lead with just one race to go, the Hungarian Grand Prix, now in Peter Magyar's Hungary, thank goodness, before the summer break. Antonelli's running away with this shit.
This is becoming a problem. It doesn't feel like he's won 7 Grand Prix already this season, but it also definitely feels like he's won 7 Grand Prix this season. This is, and look, fair play to Ferrari. Kimi had to work for this one. This was not, we made it sound a bit more straightforward in the script than it actually was. Kimi had to work for this, and as mentioned, he probably lost about 8 seconds on pit road. We had back-to-back, a pair of VSCs for debris being on track that had to be cleared out. And the second time round, Ferrari was able to take advantage of that and box both cars under a VSC. For context, a green flag pit stop is worth about 19 seconds at Spa. Under a VSC, that drops to about 11. So Leclerc obviously came out of that sequence in front. Kimi had to actually took a bit of time to get past Lando Norris, who was running long on his McLaren as well. Shout out to Lando. Drove a really, really damn good race again. And I think that McLaren would have had pace to potentially win this if he actually got to start from P3 as opposed to P13.
He might have done. He might have had pace for, at least a podium result until he had an atrocious final pit stop. It was like a nearly 8-second stop, and it undid most of that good work.
I'm starting to ask Piastri to swap places around again, papaya rules and all that. But no,
happy fun times. Happy fun times. My brother was getting stressed about it.
My brother, who's the world's biggest Piastri fan, gets stressed every time he's on the rough end of any kind of call. More on that very shortly. But yeah, I mean, I'll give the field this. I don't think Mercedes on raw speed is that much quicker than everybody else right now. But I think that tyre wear that Antonelli has and the Mercedes has over the rest of the field, especially in the back half of these longer stints, is what's putting them at the front, because that's the one thing. I think if Ferrari are on equal footing in terms of tyres at the start, they're able to match Mercedes pound for pound. But as the stint goes on, it's like, okay, now you're losing 2 temps, now you're losing 3. And that's just, it was just a bit too much for Charles Leclerc to overcome in the end. And but it was a really fair, balanced race. And like I said, Kimi had to earn it, but earn it he did. He's driving beautifully at the moment, and he's barely putting a foot wrong. And I said it on YouTube, and I'll say it again. I think he's very good value for his 45-point lead right now, because I think he's been about 45 points better than everybody else so far this season.
There's a lot of that value just down to the fact that we just assume, he's 19. The wheels will come off eventually.
Yeah, the thing is, the wheels really aren't coming off. Like, he continues to tick the boxes. I would actually kind of go in the opposite direction. I think on the medium tires, Kimi was smart to not go and root them in the first stint and try and pull away from the field, because on the hards, he destroyed Leclerc.
I love
he was on older tires, actually.
Can I just say, I'm impressed you used the Aussie slang term of a root to describe his tires there.
You don't want to go. It's. I've heard it used here. I don't know.
Yeah, in Australia, it means sex.
Oh, fair enough. Yes, he didn't want to fuck the tires. And fuck the tires, he did not. But on the hards, he was at a tire disadvantage versus Leclerc and had to go run him down. And when he got the call to basically stop conserving, he just went and got him. He went and ran him down. We mentioned it the last time out. The kid's like a learning computer. It's like he's constantly absorbing information to work with. And he's just really fast. Most things in racing are solved by just being faster than the other dudes.
Yeah, that's, if not, I mean, as Toto Wolff, his own boss, has already said on occasion, like, you can slow down a racehorse. That's how he described Kimi after his slightly rougher Austrian Grand Prix, which he still nearly won anyway. He was only a couple of seconds off the win that day. You can tame a racehorse, and it's like we're watching Kimi blossoming into someone that looks like a world champion in real time. It's like teaching RoboCop how to drive a Formula One car. It's scary how quickly he's picking this up. If you didn't know any better, you would have thought Kimi Antonelli was the 8-year Mercedes veteran and not George Russell, who is, an 8-year veteran of F1 at this point. And
dude, Kimi Antonelli was just making that pass up the outside of Eau Rouge in a Formula 2 car this time 2 years ago.
In the pissing rain. Like, we should have known right there and then what we were signing ourselves up for. Like, and to be fair, I was one of those people that was down on Kimi when he was in Formula 2. I was like, and that's my fault for probably putting a bit too much stock into F2 as a series.
And Prema as a team in their modern form.
Yeah, and Prema as well. We just have not been anywhere near the dominant force they were.
Guys, they'll figure out the new car too soon. You guys, everything's going great at Prema. It's not.
Titletown has slowly devolved into Torture City. Population Connor Zelich. Oh man, come on. But yeah, like Kimi was. It felt like the only thing that ever put it in doubt was the VSC, and he had enough pace that he kind of just nullified it. Fair play to Charles when he was able to hang on to the overtake and grip onto the coattails of Antonelli for like 3 laps, but you could tell it was a losing battle. I mean, he was lighting the rears up pretty much every time out of La Source, trying to get purchase, trying to do what these cars require, which I guess we'll expand on later, to get good enough lap time out of them across a lap at Spa. And it was just a little too much. As soon as he dropped out of overtake, that was it, really.
Yeah, I can only echo the sentiment. Great to see Charles Leclerc is just back on form, generally speaking. This is exactly what we expect of Charles. The Hamilton's taken over the team talk has suddenly gotten very quiet again. Don't get me wrong, Lewis didn't have a terrible... I mean, Ed Straw put Lewis Hamilton 19th in the race's power ranking, which I thought he's on crack cocaine for that one, quite frankly. But
he came away with fourth place. He's now second in the world championship points. Like, Antonelli's not leading Russell anymore. He's leading Lewis Hamilton, but more on that in a bit.
Yeah, like I said, Leclerc's doing great. I'm glad that he's back to something near his best. That was a hard-earned, gritty drive, and you're never going to scoff at being 2 seconds off the win. At least his side of the garage executed their race perfectly, took advantage of the VSC hand he was dealt, and kept that race alive a lot longer than he had any right really doing. And that's the Leclerc we know and appreciate. So fair play to him. That was probably his best drive this season.
Red Bull. Yeah, Red Bull also, like, Verstappen bouncing back with another podium at third, takes the lead at the start. Like, I know it was audacious to dump all the battery up to Eau Rouge to get the lead early, but, it's Max Verstappen at kind of his home race. Like, he probably just wanted to give the crowd something before he inevitably faded back down the order, which third place wasn't bad. Isack Hadjar getting 6th from 21st on the grid was also very impressive.
Off.
Oh yeah,
most impressed I've been with Hadjar since he rolled up to F1, and he's already had a podium finish and another one yanked out of his hand. Like that. The fact that Hadjar started that from 21st, had to come through the pits in extra time, was also he sunk to the back of the field again during the early safety car we got for Russell. Basically had to do 2 hard stints once the race got going again. Only finished 11 seconds behind Max. That is a seriously impressive performance. Like, that's the best I've seen of Hadjar in F1. Really, really great stuff. It's exactly what Red Bull needs.
Very weirdly, the hard was the race tire again. 2 hard stints actually was probably a blessing because much like what happens at Silverstone at anything other than the hardest compound of tire, the mediums just go into thermal shock around here and they don't really work. Lando got that, late on as he tried to push up towards the front. Max, God loves a trier. And I don't know if he loves Max this year, but Max is certainly trying.
Yeah, if nothing else, I think it's putting any talks of him being a car merchant to rest because, like, obviously he hasn't won anything, but, like, he's getting results out of what is this the 4th best package in Formula One? It's a distant 4th.
It feels like it's those 3 teams behind Mercedes are ebbing and flowing depending on track. McLaren have been all over the place where McLaren in Miami could genuinely go bar for bar with Mercedes, and they have not done so since. Ferrari in Spain were able to outperform Mercedes and have not done so since, not on merit. Red Bull looked like they were going to win in Austria if they get that pit call one lap, one way or the other. And then, bless him again, Max was trying. Sans the spinny wing, their own Macarena wing, they actually took that off, and that certainly would have blunted their pace here, but also Max didn't get pitched into a barrier at Mach Fuck this weekend. So I guess that's a plus.
Yeah.
It's just there's no real set second team. Like Ferrari feels like the second best, but their car their car was probably 4th best here. It's just that McLaren's race was basically over before it began with Lando. And then Verstappen was probably going to end up second on the road, ended up 3rd with the VSC call because he boxed early off the mediums and onto the hard tires for their what should have been the one stop.
Yeah, I can't really argue too much of what Cam's saying there. I think it's a very, the chase behind Mercedes is a very fluid one. It seems to be it's like Ducati and Aprilia in MotoGP. It seems to be very circuit dependent right now. Whoever executes their weekend the best out of those 6 cars could easily get 1 to 2 spots on the podium if everything lands their way.
Ferrari gaining championship positions off of execution? God, 20 years.
I know, right? It feels weird, doesn't it? And it's a crazy time out there. But again, Verstappen look, he's the best driver in the world. He will bridge some of that deficit that Red Bull clearly has right now, and this weekend was no exception. On the mediums, he really wasn't that far behind Kimi Antonelli at all, like maybe only a couple of seconds over the course of that entire stint.
I tend to think that was Kimi not pulling the pin and wrecking the tires, because second half of that stint, he definitely started to bleed out time. As soon as they went on the hards, Kimi was just busted.
Yeah, I think Max didn't like the hards on his Red Bull, which probably didn't help the situation either. Two big stewarding calls in this race that got...
Yeah.
Oh, Lord, were they calls.
First one, on the opening lap, George Russell versus Lewis Hamilton. It was off the back end of the Kemmel Straight. George Russell has no battery, but that also gives him the benefit of being able to brake later into the first half of the chicane. He goes around the outside of Lewis Hamilton. Key point here, he is ahead of Lewis at the apex. He is entitled to racing room. Hamilton, I think, has a twitch of understeer at the apex.
Yeah.
Tags Russell. Russell goes into the gravel trap on the outside. His race is over. Russell's absolutely livid. In George Russell's defense, after the race, he thought it was a racing incident. He actually wasn't mad about Lewis at all. He said these things happen. He was more mad at the fact that his car had no battery in a key part of the racetrack on the opening lap. And if you've heard the radio message, yes, it is real. Partly my fault for saying I thought it might have been AI generated because of how out of place it felt. Every
fourth word was a swear.
Generative AI is a fucking scourge on this planet.
Yeah, like the fact that it was believable enough where I thought AI could have generated such a thing is scary.
Also unbelievable enough that you thought AI could have generated.
Yeah, I know.
Right.
Raptor says that just quote, they keep taking it down everywhere. You can barely share it. To clarify this, and credit to the race for reporting this originally, it's part of F1 TV and FOM's new policy. They don't like to now publish radio messages that could compromise the relationship between drivers and teams. They would rather keep that shit private, ideally. But of course, people on the internet
save it for Drive to Survive.
Yeah,
You're not wrong.
probably not wrong there either, quite frankly. But yes, that is a new policy that F1 TV has apparently put forward this year. They don't want compromising radio messages being published, essentially. They want to keep a little bit of privacy towards driver and team. But of course, if you're an F1 multi-viewer user, that totally legal service, or have transcripts or figure out workarounds in different languages, then you could probably still find it somewhere, basically. Just to clarify that out before we move on, because even I thought that was originally an AI message, because it felt like it was censored in real time. I think it was our friend Emma, who does a lot of the F1 TV streaming for us on our Discord server, was like, well, they've cut the audio here, which was very peculiar. It's not something that F1 TV normally does. Just wanted to clarify that. Gentlemen, what did you make of that lap one incident?
It is worth noting the Twitch was post initial contact. So they hit, and then Lewis has to overcorrect and effectively overcorrects into Russell. Doesn't change the fact that, stop me if you've heard this one before, Lewis Hamilton is on the inside. He is forced to give Russell racing room because of the rules of engagement, and he fails to hold his line. He does understeer a bit. He's following another car. It's lap one. The car's heavy on fuel. That's a rough one, buddy.
Contrasting with the other incident as well.
Yeah, the other incident was early on in the race. Charles Leclerc and Oscar Piastri are fighting again down the back end of the Kemmel. Piastri's got about, I'd say, maybe a third to maybe half a car alongside Charles on the run down to the braking zone. Charles pinches him a bit on the outside of the curve on the way in, under the braking for the corner. There's contact. It actually breaks off a piece of Piastri's floor. It does compromise his car for the rest of the race. Stewards looked at it, deemed no further action. In Hamilton's case, he was given a mitigated 5-second penalty. Now, in context in this, because again, we've seen statements since, basically the stewards said that we took lap 1 as a mitigating factor into the Hamilton collision, so we knocked it down from 10 seconds, which is the baseline now for a collision or for a driving penalty on track in general. The baseline is now 10 seconds. They knocked it down to 5.
If there is one thing that I will generally praise the FIA on, and I know, put the pitchforks down. I'm sorry. It is that in these very stupid black and white rules of engagement that I've been very critical of for like 2 years now, generally the FIA takes a definitional loss of control of the car and failing to hold your line as forfeiting the right to the turn. Lewis understeered. He understeered into the car and is outside. Definitionally, he's lost the right to the turn. And in addition to wiping Russell out of the race, that feels like a penalty that should be far less controversial than it is, because the pitchforks have been out in full force on social media about this. I had no problem with giving him 5 seconds on that. And I think if you reverse the roles, I think it's the exact same situation.
Actually, and I can't believe this, I think the stewards were spot on. I think the stewards used the rule book excellently, in my opinion. Like, if we're going to spend half the time roasting the stewards for getting it wrong, I think it's only fair I praise them when they get it right. And I think they got this one spot on. By the book, Hamilton is not entitled to racing room. Russell has gone round the outside of him. He's ahead at the apex. He doesn't even have to be ahead. If he's at wing mirror level of Hamilton's car, he's entitled to racing room. And the rules are, if it's a chicane, you go by the first half of the chicane. Russell was in front. It's his corner. Now, as we said before, I don't like these rules of engagement as much as the next person, but by the book that we've been given, I think going 10 seconds for causing the collision and then knocking it down to 5 because of mitigating circumstances, I think was fine. I think that was spot on as to how I had it. I thought it almost felt sheepish giving Lewis a penalty because it was such a minor thing. But by the book, you have to. You can't say it's a racing incident in one hand and then also say Hamilton's fully responsible with the other. Those statements contradict themselves. You can't do that.
And yet, at times I've seen it doled out both ways. Not to play devil's advocate like any other mediocre white man, but do we feel like the Leclerc Piastri incident was penalty worthy? Because I've heard it said that like maybe these were 2 incidents where maybe the final outcome should have been reversed.
If you want my opinion, I think that was fine. The reason why I say that is, again, you look at the rule book. Piastri's on the outside of Charles Leclerc's car. So by the rules of engagement, he has to be at Charles Leclerc's wing mirror to demand space. Piastri was not at Leclerc's wing mirror. It's Charles's corner, and as the stewards rightly said in their report, Charles has the right to take the race in line at that point. The onus is on Piastri to back out of it. And he left it too late. He hung his car out there where it probably shouldn't have been. It's unfortunate that there was contact, and it's unfortunate that it damaged Piastri's car. But I've said it many a time, we shouldn't be punishing drivers based on outcome. You base it on the action or inaction in depending on the context. So by the book, Charles has done nothing wrong unless you're implying that he's driven into the side of Piastri's car on purpose. And I think the burden of proof for that has to be extremely high for me to say that. So I think it's incidental contact, and I think it was fine that it was no further action. That's my opinion on it.
I mean, fair enough. This also...
Yeah.
Nothing to really add, honestly. I did think the contact was a bit much, but yeah.
We've once again fallen into this bit where, as Antonelli has a poor weekend, George Russell finishes either first or second. And now as Antonelli wins, Russell is in the gravel trap. I mean, do we have to once again check up on what's going on George Russell's side? Now he's third in the championship. He's got Hamilton between himself and Kimi Antonelli, who's now 50 points ahead of his teammate, who, let's not forget, was odds-on title favorite going into the start of the season and looked every bit as much coming out of the Australian Grand Prix, which he won.
Yeah, and the killer is that he really hasn't looked like that ever since the Australian Grand Prix. I would argue like the only other weekend where he's looked definitively stronger than Kimi was probably the race he won in Austria. And even then, second half of that race, Kimi was faster. It's just that Kimi's opening stint was so bad that it didn't end up mattering how much faster he was. This one really doesn't feel like it's on Russell, though. This feels like he did have a genuine mechanical issue with his power unit that seemed to creep up in the third sector. Second sector, he was typically right with Kimi across a lap. And then third sector, for whatever reason, his car just would not boost properly down the straight. And he always bled a couple of tenths to Kimi. We go into the race. He comes out of La Source having made a very good start. Is up alongside, I believe, Max. And then he just gets drag raced on the run up to Eau Rouge.
Right. And then I also think back to, and I know it's just the difference between the first and the second row, but people will say he did get half a second put on him in Q3 by his teammate in the same car in equal machinery.
And that's
all in Sector 3, basically.
Not quite. I mean, I looked at the telemetry of that lap and I looked at the race's analysis of it. He loses 2 tenths on the run to Puhon out of no name. It's very odd.
And it's all in a straight line. It's not the corners.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. On corners, he and Kimi are virtually identical, but the big chunks of time that Russell lost in that qualifying run in Q3 was he lost about 2 tenths at Puhon on the run to Puhon, which again is a very short straight for Spa standards, and the other half was about 2.5 tenths on the run through Blanchimont. So I don't know whether different sides of the Mercedes garage have different philosophies on deployment, or whether there was a genuine mechanical issue. Toto seemed to half imply that there was. He said it was 50% Russell, 50% the car. And he also revealed after the race that apparently every Mercedes power unit had deployment issues coming out of La Source turn 1. It just affected some cars more than others. So it's hard to really get a read on this one as to what exactly went wrong with George this weekend. Because look, I know we've been down on George this year, and to a degree rightly so. He's not half a second slower than Kimi. That's ridiculous. Something has gone very wrong here. And George even implied during the weekend that they might have finally figured out basically what's gone on here, or why I figured out what might be wrong. There might be a chassis change coming during the summer break. Who knows? That's normally what half that sort of talk leads to. But in any case, it's bizarre. Something is not right about that side of the garage right now, and I'm not quite sure what it is.
I really struggle to think, given you can see it blatantly in the data. I don't think it's chassis. I think it's that power unit that they plugged in Austria has not been right. But also he can't afford to take one, because if he's dropped down a weekend, unless Kimi's car breaks, which is very possible with the W17 on current form, that's another lost weekend, and he can't afford any more of those. It's just as bad, if not worse.
I really would want to take that penalty, especially at the next 2 tracks we got coming up, because it's the Hungaroring and it's Zandvoort after the summer break. Now, would any of y'all describe those as places where it is easy to overtake because they are very wide, high-speed tracks with not a lot of technical sectors?
Bit twisty.
Bit narrow. Bit hard to get by, folks.
Bit twisty, bit narrow, and if you're in Hungary, the power unit's not going to make as big a difference because it's a very regen-happy track. There's a lot of medium-level braking zones, and you'll be able to regen. I think the regen limit's 9 megajoules for this weekend. So, like, the power unit's not going to make a huge difference either.
Yeah, but these cars are so dependent on their ERS systems now, far more so than in the past, that I would argue every track now is an ERS track, other than, like, Monaco.
Sure. But, like this alludes to what we were going to say quite nicely here as well, in the sense of a lot of fans came off this race not happy. There was, like, again, like, I know I'm giving the race a lot of credit this weekend. I'm not intending to. It's coincidental, but they had Ben Anderson down there actually at the track and talking about the visual spectacle of seeing cars go through it, because Antonelli, I think they said he did 203 miles an hour up the other end of Eau Rouge, but then, of course, he's losing time down the Camel Straight because he's now regenning. And, of course, some of the spectacles going away. A lot of people responded to Martin Brundle being very melodramatic in his weekly Sky column, talking about how we've lost all these high-speed corners like Maggots and Beckett's, and now
he's had a genuine cry about it.
Like I'm like, Jesus Christ! Like, Billy Buxton would be proud of this over dramaticness, but it's
more on that later.
Definitely more on that later. But yeah, this was probably one of the tamer F1 races we've had so far this season in terms of raw action to a degree. Like, I don't know. I mean, I'm in two minds about it, because I've said from the start, and I maintain that I've genuinely enjoyed this season so far. I've had a lot of what I like to call good races, a lot of 7 out of 10 Grand Prix that are watchable. They're good. You know, you don't regret watching them. You've had a decent time, and that's fine. Like, if your baseline is a 7 out of 10, you're doing well, quite frankly. But there's also going to be that niggling concern that the way F1 is going racing is very weird right now. And the big talk coming out of this race this weekend is, oh, look, it's the AI that's in these cars' computers that are now fucking it up for everybody. So, you know.
Well, and the neat part is that we had that, 9 years ago, when Alonso's car got, like, the model they used to model the ERS deployment got lost because he took Fuan flat. That's sort of been a thing, but again, with how reliant these cars are on the battery compared to the previous cars, it shows up more. And these are what feel like inevitable teething pains of doing power units of this configuration and then having teams still figuring them out each season in. And you're also not allowed to upgrade them. You're not allowed to test them on track. You're not allowed to do a lot of the things that, let's say, LMP1 was able to do in 2014 when they went to a very similar concept power unit wise. But you could also just go run laps. And you'd say, like, Porsche that year, which were the first ones to figure out, oh, we have a gigantic battery. What if we just blast it in the first half of the straight and then coast on the internal combustion engine? Even with all that testing time, it took them until about Fuji that year, about halfway through the season, to actually cook up that strategy. These teams are as in the dark as we are because they don't necessarily know what their car is going to do lap to lap. And it's very blatant and very jarring when an issue does happen, like what we saw with George Russell on the opening lap.
And the drivers don't like this regulation set, and of course a lot of people in the fandom are going to hinge their very existence on what these drivers have to say. We've talked about it on the show before. Verstappen's been complaining about this for 3 years now, since the moment he got in the sim.
And we all mocked him for it. Everyone in the whole F1 circle laughed at this fucking dude.
Well, now Oscar Piastri has just said that computers are ruining Formula One. So that offers a different perspective from a not Max Verstappen source.
Yeah, he said, and I quote, "It's a pretty crap way to go racing," was the exact words that he said. Very Australian of him. But yeah, like
the problem is, RJ, is that the horse is already out of the stable.
Yeah,
Max was saying this shit in 2023, and we're like, well, of course they're changing the cars. You have the best car right now. You don't want things to change.
Exactly. Everybody thought it was Red Bull playing politics when they said this isn't going to work, you guys. But everyone was like, this was in the middle of Max winning 19 out of 22 rounds that season. So everybody naturally just assumed they're playing politics, when no, for once, Horner and Verstappen were actually being sincere and saying, we don't think this is going to work, you guys. And then we just thrashed on anyway. I mean, look, for me, and I made a video about this earlier today, I said in said video, F1 keeping its old spec of battery from the last generation is a huge part of the problem here. Their batteries are tiny. They're 4 megajoules. And that's the maximum you can deploy at any one time. If you've got a 4 megajoule battery, but you can regen at least 8 or 9 per lap, you're always going to get this clunky 4 in, 4 out, but you can actually regen more or less. And then you've now got a computer to try and figure out what the best pattern is for regen and then deployment. Yeah, the computers are going to be involved because they're better at human beings and working this out. It's like Formula E, which we often rag. It's a game of efficiency. So naturally, that's what you hire the computer to do. That, like any smart F1 team would. But let's be real. As Formula One fans, the consensus doesn't want computers. They want drivers to be in charge of all of this shit. They want it to be in their God-given hands.
We want our headphone jacks back in our phones. We want our students to actually write their essays and not have someone writing for them.
And we want to throw it back to the good old V10 days from the early 2000s with traction control and stability control and automatic gearboxes. And wait a minute.
It's almost
Are you saying that this is how the sausage has always been made, Dre?
What have I always said on this show? People love a sausage, but no one wants to know how the sausage is made. Because if you see how a sausage is made, it's pretty grim. But it tastes delicious when you cook it right. This is the problem.
Especially when it sounds like a 20,000 RPM V10 going up the camel.
Of course. And like I've said it before, like
18,000.
Yeah, close enough. But you know, it's what's a couple of thousand revs between friends. Point I'm getting at here is that, and I've always said this, you can move those goalposts very easily as to what's deemed artificial if you try hard enough. Like right now, there's a funny example that happened during this weekend when Max Verstappen wins the Overtake of the Month award for his pass on Lewis Hamilton in Austria, and he describes it as, "Well, I pushed the button and I passed him." So, and of course, you know, classic Max, dry sense of humor. We love that shit. Well, at the same time, yes, people are going to look cynically and say, oh, he's pushed a button and he's passed him. We used to do that with opening our rear wings for DRS passes for 15 years, and we eventually shut up and got on with it. That could easily be deemed as artificial, where you're pushing a button for a rear wing to open, and that was how the only way you passed people.
I think the killer for these regulations, I think in a lot of people's eyes, is that, and I mentioned this early on in this season, and because you've got the active aerodynamics that shut the wings off, these cars, just like the ground effect cars at Spa last year, these things don't make any fucking slipstream.
No.
If you go up behind someone, you're not really gaining much unless you're on the battery.
If you're not on the battery, and we saw this in Formula 2 as well, to be fair, if anybody watched those races, and they have cars that are very similar to Super Formula, generate a lot of downforce these days, and alongside the figure 650 horsepower in an F2 car nowadays, or at least roughly 650, depending on which mechachrome you've got. Point I'm getting at here is you could be within 0.3 of someone going down the camel, DRS wing open, and you still wouldn't be able to even get alongside for an attempt to pass somebody, unless you had a really big braking job. So, like,
I think that's the killer, Dre, is that if the battery overtakes are no more or less artificial than we have with DRS. The fact that it's a limited commodity because you are filling and just charging a battery means you're going to have haves and you're going to have have-nots under these regulations. Severe have-not in the case of, like, we would watch Max be really quick in all the turns and then just got killed on the ghost car on qualifying every time Kimi's car was on the battery boost.
Yeah.
If you don't have any passes but the battery passes, people are going to bitch. And people are going to bitch louder and louder.
Yeah.
And I just think a lot of people are putting stock and anger into the wrong part of the regulations, where once again, we've got pretty draggy, downforce heavy cars that turn their wings on and off. And you've got you've somehow combined that monster of overbody aerodynamics like what we used to have, and having no slipstream like the late ground effect cars have, and you've gotten the worst of both worlds out of it.
The battery, well, this is what a lot of people don't realize. The battery's a band-aid. It is a band-aid for the cars not being able to actually race each other.
More next episode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The battery's a band-aid. They call it what it is. It's a band-aid over cars that are intentionally designed to not race each other. Because this is what the engineers do. Once they figure out the rule book, they're going to find ways to add topside downforce, which adds dirty air, and surprise, surprise, people can't follow each other.
No engineer gets paid 6-7 figures to be like, hey, how can we make the show better?
Well, that's the problem. You've got probably 2 or 3 of those guys in the regulating body compared to an army in the teams who are all paid to go ruin that guy's day.
The FIA doesn't have 100 aerodynamicists and technical people in their department building these cars compared to the amount of resources that Formula One teams do. They're spending hundreds of millions on this shit. The FIA is a non-profit.
Well, and I'd argue these aerodynamic regulations were ill-made in the first place. I think you would have been much better served trying to fix the ground effect cars than you were ever going to be served going back to topside aerodynamics. But that's just me. I'm just a fat guy from New Hampshire who likes watching race cars.
But that's the problem. There was too much politics from the engine manufacturers for them. They wanted their cars to be more road relevant. They wanted to get rid of the MGUH, otherwise they were going to scare off Audi. They didn't want, to have, there was going to be plans about to have front axle regen, but then they were too scared that Audi might have a leg up on everybody. Again, politics plays, as Max Verstappen again said earlier this season, politics plays a huge role in this. You can't please everybody here, and the sport wanted to work to get more engine suppliers. It succeeded because we now have 6 of them. But the problem is that no one's happy because we're not getting overtakes to look natural enough. It's a weird
Mercedes probably sounds pretty happy these days.
Oh, I can imagine. They're winning again. First time they've done that properly in about 5 years.
Maybe Ferrari is happy. Ford, we'll see once they sort their battery situation.
Audi, I feel like we do have to shout out Audi here.
Yeah.
Pitted under the VSC with Gabriele Bortoleto, jumped the midfield, got some more points on the board.
Best result of the year. 8th place, P8, 4 more points for Audi, and they're only, I think, 1 point behind Williams now. Which is
1 point behind Williams, 10 behind Haas, and Haas have been god-awful for 2 months. And the thing is, with the structure of this field right now, you've got 4 definitive teams and then a big gap to everyone. Well, you've got RB in no man's land right now, because on pace, RB has the midfield covered and then some.
Mm-hmm. Is that a neat segue to our next talk-with point?
Almost. It is. What I'll say is those points for Audi, any points that those other midfield stragglers can notch up on over RB are going to matter way more down the stretch of this season.
Yeah. What I was going to get to was that at the Monaco Grand Prix, Haas was 7th in the championship, stood on 21 points. They were 14 points behind Racing Bulls, which sits in the standings. They're still where they're at in the standings, only Haas has gone 4 races without scoring a Grand Prix point. Oliver Behrman was 14th. Esteban Ocon was 17th. Neither one really looked like challenging points. It's a pretty rotten run. And really the only thing that is saving grace for Haas is that everybody else in that lower midfield is also kind of bad. Williams has gone the same amount of races without scoring a point. Audi just got back on the board. We don't have to. We were done talking about Aston Martin.
We're not done talking about Aston Martin.
Oh,
what I'd say to that,
that's a you problem. You keep bringing it up.
what I would say, what matters there is that Audi's reliability has been dog shit.
It's been awful.
Because if they got their potential points on the board, they'd probably be right with Haas or better.
It's only
the fact that they're not.
Back.
Yeah. And if Audi can notch up, I don't know, an 8th or a 9th here and there, they can cut that down because Haas have not even sniffed points in 4 races.
Yeah, Gabriel Bortoleto is driven extremely well in the middle of this season right now. He's actually beating Nico Hulkenberg week in and week out now. He's taking a big step forward this year.
Hulkenberg's pace was pretty good this race. Unfortunately, he was mired in what looked like a Battlefield 1 clip from the trenches.
Yeah, pretty much. He was in a war zone out there. Poor guy. I mean, no, you talked about Haas here, and like Haas have not scored for 4 Grand Prix weekends, and there is a lot of murmurs about the future of Esteban Ocon, which is also quite interesting. Like it's getting to the point where there's now too much smoke. Brazilian media is already reporting that Rafa Kamara is going to be their reserve driver next year, and adding him to the already large fleet of Haas drivers that are not in their F1 car every weekend, like Ryo Hirakawa, who RJ calm down, he's not going to F1, he's fine, I promise. And
you
also
need to tell everybody else that's like
well.
hyping up the prospect of a guy who's going to be 33 years old. It's like, yeah, he'll be in a full-time F1 because Toyota's sponsoring the team. No, you really don't
stay in the number 8 Toyota, getting just like collateral repeatedly.
Yeah,
which is fine. It's better than him being turned into our generation's Yuji Ide, and I know he's a better driver than that. But
don't you ever put that evil on Ryo Hirakawa in my presence?
I feel dirty saying that, but you look at a driver in his early 30s who's just coming into the sport, it's just like it lines up perfectly, and I know he's a better driver than that. Leonardo Fornaroli still is window shopping.
Yeah, but he's massively overhated on the internet because there's a small subsection of Formula One Twitter that pays too much attention to junior series at this point, and they keep bringing up the same thing with Leonardo Fornaroli. He was whooped in Formula 3 by Gabriel Bortoleto when they were teammates, and that's now apparently been beaten to death with him by a stick ever since, even though you're completely ignoring the fact that drivers are allowed to improve.
Fornaroli, Trey, did you know that Alex Palou is actually a bum because he was kind of bad in junior formulas?
Yeah, like arguably the second best race car driver on the planet today was shit in F3, therefore he's a bust. It's almost like the goalpost.
He was just upper midfield. Goalpost moved and all that. Like Felix Rose won the Indianapolis 500. He was an overager in old Formula 3.
Like, this is the problem. It was like, you now have to have a pristine junior run like Oscar Piastri to be considered an S-tier prospect. And even then, you might not necessarily get in because, Piastri didn't get a seat straight away when he won the Formula 2 title. And this was
famously.
This was off the back of being a one-and-done Freca F3, F2 champ. No one, I think, has ever done that. He ran the gauntlet and was successful perfectly. Yeah. And even that wasn't enough to get him an F1 seat straight away. Right. The system has failed. I don't see what people understand about this. And
you know, all those theoretical F1 World Championships that Stoffel Van Dorn racked up with his glittering junior record.
At least he got
mad about it.
At least he got a World Championship somewhere. But Jesus Christ, you know, he was from round the way. He was leaving with something, but. Like, Fornaroli is a quality fucking driver. If anyone actually watched his Formula 2 season, yes, he only had the one feature race win, but he had an average finish, I want to say, of 5.5, which for F2
is hard because F2 is a chaos ladder.
It's a chaos ladder,
especially in 2020
gets reversed.
Yeah.
The first year of a new formula and all that, and like... I know, like, I said it before and I'll say it again. People love to talk about how much they hated how Helmut Marko ran the Red Bull Junior team and how tough he was on young drivers, and then will log on to their social media platform of choice and evaluate junior formula drivers with a harsher comb, if not as harsh as what Helmut Marko would do, because you basically have to be what Max Verstappen was. So good in 1 year of European Formula 3 that he's undeniable. You basically have to be what Kimi Antonelli was. So good in Formula 4 and Formula Regional that what he did in Formula 2 just didn't matter.
And Kimi ended up being kind of a special case anyway, because Toto was not going to get burned on missing out on the person who was meant to be the next big thing. And it's safe to say that investment has been paying off.
Yeah, safe to say on that one, a quick note on that. Leonardo Fornaroli is a fucking quality driver. He's absolutely good enough to be in Formula One. And I'm glad that at least Haas are going to give him an old car test to at least evaluate where he's at compared to everybody else. Because from what I've been told, people in the paddock rate Fornaroli quite highly because he's no nonsense, he's quiet, but he works his arse off, and he's apparently really quick. From what people have said about his simulator times.
If the seat opened up for him, I'd be okay with it. Shit, if that was the Aero McLaren seat that went to either Scott or Felix, I'd have been fine with that too.
So instead, I've just got a bad feeling, and this is not, I promise I'm not saying this to take a swipe at sports cars or anything cynical like that, but Leonardo Fornaroli is going to be an absolutely fine McLaren hypercar driver when that rolls around, but he's good enough to be in Formula One, as far as I'm concerned. And Rafa Kamara might be as well, coming out of Invicta. But again, there's only 22 seats to go around. And I think if I fought with Antonelli and a couple of other youngsters like Ollie Behrman in recent years, it would encourage the teams to gamble a little bit more on younger talent. It seems to have done the opposite, where now teams are now more prepared to stick. And these things often go in cycles. It's going to take something truly special to break that mold coming out of F2. And I'm not sure F2 is a serious enough racing series for someone to look that good in it, to where F1 teams are going to be falling over themselves to try and sign it.
The one way you fix it is to do things that would compromise the entertainment value of Formula 2, because let's be real, we rag on Formula 2, but we always say, damn, sometimes these races are really, really entertaining. They're just wild.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if I say that, but I know other people say that.
Yeah, it tastes the matter. Taste is subjective and all that.
Belgian Grand Prix feature race was fucking crazy because telling them to do 6 laps on super softs was effing stupid, and it made for great drama. Go watch it if you haven't already. It's a great race for all the wrong reasons. But yes, go watch it. Before we get out of here, and props to Spa for saying they had 400,000 this weekend over the 3 days, a record attendance for the Belgian Grand Prix. A part of me wonders, was that because this is the last Belgian Grand Prix?
Second.
Second
to last before, because we'll go back to 2027 and then we'll go back again in 2029.
So it's gonna be a rotation around with Barcelona going forward, basically.
I'm gonna be sad when it's only every other year. I know that there has not been a lot of people that have been hyped for a Belgian Grand Prix. I know it is a event that is more based off of its previous reputation now in modern F1. I get all that, but also I do like Spa-Francorchamps as a circuit. It is a well-supported event. People from all over Europe and abroad come out to watch that race. And when it is off the calendar, I feel like it will be noticed as a glaring absence from the calendar that people will clamor to have back as a full-time event. Unfortunately, these are how calendars are going to be right now. And in this instance, I don't think any of our West Asian rounds, well, when they take place again, we'll see, they're not giving up space because they're paying too much money for that. I don't think Formula One's going to want to make United States rounds rotational. I mean, I'm sure everybody would love it if they were rotational and that we didn't have 3 United States rounds a year, but that ain't happening.
I mean, there's a reason there's rumors still flying that Formula One wants to try and get either Bahrain or Saudi Arabia back on the calendar before the season's out. The big reason being those 2 rounds carry about £50 million in hosting fees each.
Money.
Imagine walking into an F1 shareholders meeting and saying, hey, that's about 2% of our revenue gone, and there's nothing we can do to get it back. Yes, of course, people will say it's an act of God because of course, of the ongoing conflict between Iran and the United States. But you get my point. There's no nice way of dropping, hey, if we lose these 2 Grand Prix, it's going to cost us about 4% of our annual revenue. Because F1 makes about 2.1, 2.2 billion a year.
Yeah, F1 did this about 6 years ago. How much revenue was lost in races, which I know that's obviously the amount of revenue that Formula One loses in 2020 during the peak of coronavirus is the most important thing here. I'm being so sarcastic right now.
But
let's not forget as well, they dodged a few bullets because they put on a few races that they otherwise were not going to be able to by moving venues and basically shaking hands and being really thankful to a couple of tracks that were able to accommodate them.
Yeah, that was a lot of party favors. Imola stuck around on the calendar for 5 extra years purely because it did them a solid in 2020 to get back on the calendar in the first place, even though it really wasn't F1 standard as a facility by then. Yeah, there's no getting around it. Calendar rotation is a necessary evil because Formula One can take to the bank. It has about 28 venues right now that can host a Grand Prix, want to host a Grand Prix, and would even be okay with it being bilateral, or I will say bi-yearly, I should say, or biannual, if it wants to be. Unlike Spa's one of them, Barcelona's another. We've got Turkey coming back next year, Istanbul. People have forgotten about that too. They still want a Grand Prix in Africa at some point. Thailand is still heavily rumored to be happening in 2028 potentially. They're going to have about a 28, 29 venue pool of tracks that they can lean on. And I'm okay with them flipping a few rounds here and there. Yeah. My issue is that I love Spa. Spa's one of the ultimate and one of the best driving tracks in the world. There's a reason why it's so popular in video games and sim racing, because everybody loves Spa. I love Spa, much as the next person.
Sim racers being told to drive something other than GT3s at Spa-Francorchamps, and it's like the kid with the vein bulging out of his forehead. But there's a reason why it's such a fun track to drive.
It is, and I'd like to also personally extend on my knees a groveling apology to the internet for disagreeing with your Lord and Savior James Jimmer Broadbent about the state of F1 cars by comparison. Apparently that really upset some of you, and I hadn't earned enough internet brownie points working for WTF1 to earn the right to disagree with him. Please accept my humble apology. But the big reason why Spa's going is because it doesn't produce great racing in these cars. And that's not the track's fault, it's the car's fault. And it has been for the last 5 years. There's been one good Belgian Grand Prix in the last half decade that was probably 23s. And that's about it. And that's a shame because it's a fantastic track. But the way these cars are, it doesn't work with a big, wide, flowing track like Spa. And if it doesn't work there, then that sucks. But that's not Spa's fault. And that's
the killer is 15 years ago, this would be the exact kind of track that would generate good racing for those exact reasons, because you could alternate lines and overtake people. That's the thing that stopped you from doing so, which is really dumb.
It's a one-line racetrack. You're compromising yourself too much. Yeah. It's now in these cars and with this much downforce and this much raw speed, it's a one-line racetrack. You can't overtake anywhere now except the back of the camel if you're lucky. And that's with a battery, which I know everybody loves right now. So,
you can't even go flat at Wuhan anymore. This is so awful.
It's completely crippled my viewing experience. Bite me. But that's the regulations we've got, and we've got to suck it up. And look, it's not like the FIA's trying to fix it, because they are. It is what it is. Amazing. We ended up talking for an hour and 5 minutes because that's what we do on this show. That was Formula One in Belgium. We'll be back next week to talk about the Hungarian Grand Prix, the Hungaroring, another one of those F1 tracks that really should suck. But it has this great knack of producing great races. I don't know how he keeps doing it, but it does.
One or the other with Hungaroring. Either it's the most boring race you've ever seen, or
it's a banger.
Or 2015.
It's Peter Magyar's Hungary now. I have a great feeling.
I've got a feeling it's going to be quite good. I think there's going to be a fair amount of battery passing, which people are going to love or hate on the main straight, and I think it could be quite an interesting technical race.
Grade that one on the curve of how good Kimi Antonelli's start is.
That could be interesting, but we shall see. We're back next week to review that. And that's all we're reviewing next week, which is kind of weird, but here we are because MotoGP's in the middle of its summer break, and IndyCar now has a week off before they return at Portland. Speaking of IndyCar, that'll be our next episode as we talk about a flooded, damp, wet, salty, you name it, Nashville Music City Grand Prix. And a lot went down, but in the end, of course, Alex Palou won. Until next time, I've been Dre Harrison, they've been RJ O'Connell and Cameron Buckley. Thank you very much for watching and listening. See you guys next time. Sayonara, y'all.
Kind of hard not to look smug right now.
You do that anyway. You're basically the podcast's Jeremy Clarkson.
Don't you ever say those words to me.